Hello friends, I am Assistant Professor Swapna Baraskar from Pharmaceutical Chemistry Department. Today we are going to discuss the chromatography. What are the learning outcomes of the chromatography? Means today in the lecture what we are going to discuss. First is the what is the definition, means what is the exact meaning of the chromatography, its basic introduction, what is the principle of chromatography, and what are the different types of the chromatography. Okay, now here introduction. What is chromatography? What is the exact meaning? Chromatography is the technique which is used for the separation of a mixture. Okay, it is a physical method of a separation. Okay, what it do, it distributes the component to separate between two phases. One is the stationary phase and another is the mobile phase. Here the mobile phase is act as a solvent, where the stationary phase is act as a column packing material, means compound travel through that supporting material. What is the purpose of a chromatography? Chromatography is used in many different ways. Okay, it is used to find out what is in solid or liquid, also used to determine what unknown substances are present in there. Okay, now there are two main purposes of the chromatography. First is the analytical purpose and another is the preparative purpose. What is the analytical purpose? Means chromatography is used to determine the chemical composition of a sample, where it is used as a preparative purpose, means it is used to purify and also collect the one or more components of a samples which is present in a mixture form. Okay, there are different terms like mobile phase. What is the mobile phase? The phase that travel through the column, means it may be present as it may be gas or it may be liquid, and which transport the sample through the column, where the sample get interact with the stationary phase and then it gets separated. What is the stationary phase? It is also known as the immobilized phase. Okay, it is immiscible solid or liquid phase that fixed in the place in the column, or it is also fixed on the solid supports. What it do, it rotate analytes within the column. Then what is the meaning of analyte? Analyte means this substance which is analyzed in a column. And what is the solvent? Solvent means any substance capable of solubilizing another substance. Okay, what is the meaning of retention time? Time takes for analyte to pass through the system from column inlet to the detectors under the set condition. What are the different types of the chromatography? Okay, here are different 6 types of the chromatography. It is based on their different forms. Like first is the classification based on the physical state of stationary phase and mobile phase. Another is the classification based on the principle of separation. Then next is the classification, it's based on the separation mode of separation in chromatography. Then it is also based on the shape of stationary phase. Also it is based on the purpose of chromatography experiment. Next is it is based on the physical or chemical characteristics of the stationary phase. Okay, then the first classification is based on the physical state of the stationary phase and mobile phase. Okay, from that here there are different types of the chromatography. Like first is the gas solid chromatography, means here in the gas solid chromatography, gas is act as a mobile phase and the solid is act as a stationary phase. Okay, second is the gas liquid chromatography. In that gas is act as a mobile and the liquid is the stationary phase. Okay, then third is the liquid solid chromatography. In that liquid is a mobile phase and solid is a stationary phase. Okay, then the column chromatography. These are the examples of the liquid solid chromatography: column chromatography, thin layer chromatography, high performance liquid chromatography. In that, what is the mobile phase? Mobile phase is a liquid, and what is the stationary phase? Stationary phase is a solid. Okay, then next type is the liquid chromatography. Examples of the liquid chromatography is the paper partition chromatography and the high performance liquid chromatography. In the liquid chromatography, both the phases are the means both the mobile phase and the stationary phases are liquid form. The next is the classification based on the principle of separation. Okay, what is the principle of the chromatography? It is based on the two phenomenon. First is the adsorption phenomenon and another is the partition phenomenon. Here the adsorption, what is the adsorption chromatography? Adsorption is the process where the analyte in a mixture is adsorbed on the surface of the stationary phase. Okay, stationary phase here, stationary phase is a solid form and mobile phase is a present in liquid form. Okay, separation takes place on the basis of the adsorption of a solute on the stationary phase, where it is separated according to their relative affinity. Means the compounds which are having higher affinity towards the stationary phase, they travel slowly as compared to the mobile phase, and the compounds which are having higher affinity towards the mobile phase, that compounds eluted firstly as compared to the other compounds. Okay, what are the examples of the adsorption chromatography? TLC means thin layer chromatography, column chromatography, HPLC and HPTLC. Then what is the partition chromatography? Partition chromatography, it is means it is explained as a distribution of a solute between the two immiscible phases. Means solute get distributed between the two immiscible phases. Okay. For example, consider in the partition chromatography, if there are two immiscible solvents are mixed together in a beaker, okay, and a solute is added into that beaker, then the solute is distributed or get partitioned within the two solvent as per their partition coefficient. Okay, in the partition coefficient, stationary phase and the mobile phase both are present in the liquid form. Okay, the separation occurs by the partition phenomenon in that case. Then the molecules which are having higher dissolution or the higher partition into the mobile phase, that molecules get separated faster, means that molecules get eluted firstly from the column, and the molecules which are having lesser partition distribution or the dissolution into the mobile phase, means these are having higher dissolution into the stationary phase, that particles eluted slowly as compared to the that particles. And the examples of the partition chromatography is the paper chromatography, partition chromatography and the high performance liquid chromatography. Then third classification based on the mode of separation in chromatography. Okay, the interaction which occurs between the solute, stationary and the mobile phase. There are different types of the interaction which occurs between the solute, stationary and the mobile phase. First is the interaction polar-polar. Okay, second is the non-polar, and third is the polar non-polar interaction. Okay, there are the two types, normal phase chromatography and the reverse phase chromatography. What happen in the normal phase chromatography? Here the stationary phase act as a polar and the mobile phase act as a non-polar. Okay, non-polar compounds are eluted faster as compared to the non-polar compound because these are more dissolved in the mobile phase. Examples are the column, TLC and HPLC. In the reverse phase chromatography, vice versa, means here the stationary phases act as a non-polar and the mobile phases act as a polar. Examples are the paper chromatography and the reverse phase HPLC. Then the classification based on the shape of stationary phase. Okay, what are the shapes of the stationary phase? First is the planar chromatography, means here the stationary phase is in presence of flat. Okay, and what is the another? Column, means in that the stationary phase is present in a column form. Okay, here in the planar chromatography, development occurs on the plane surface because here the stationary phase is present in a flat. Okay, stationary phase is layer of adsorption on the plane surface. Examples are the TLC, paper chromatography and the HPTLC. Then what is the next type? Column chromatography. In that the stationary phase is present in a column shape. Okay, stationary phase is a column is adsorbed in the glass tube, adsorbent in the glass tube, and the samples separated by the solvent moving through the system. Examples are the HPLC, HPTLC and the TLC. The next classification based on the purpose of the experiment. As we already discussed, what is the purpose of chromatography? It is the for used for analytical purpose and the preparative purpose. Okay. Here in the preparative chromatography, sample is injected in very large amount and separated the pure components, which is next used for the analysis. And in the analytical chromatography, normally the small amount of samples are used for the identification and the determination of the compounds. Then the classification based on the physical or chemical characteristics of the stationary phase. In that, first is the size exclusion chromatography. In the size exclusion chromatography, mostly gel is used for the separation of the compounds by molecular size. Okay, gel is used as a stationary phase. Examples of the gels which are used in the size exclusion chromatography are the cross-linked polystyrene and the polyvinyl acetate gel, then the cross-linked dextrans, agar gel, etc. And the mobile phase which is used in the size exclusion chromatography is the aqueous or non-aqueous solvent like organic solvents or the aqueous buffers. Okay, now next what are the questions are occurred from this today's discussions means what we discuss in the today's discussion, what is the chromatography, what is the meaning of mobile phase and the stationary phase, what is the exact principle of the chromatography, means it is based on the adsorption phenomenon, partition phenomenon, what are the different types of the chromatography, then what is the purpose of chromatography, like means it is used for the analytical purpose and it is used for the preparative purpose. Okay, thank you friends.